You're definitely
Um,
right.
I also just want to say another, you know, it kind of came from left field. I read this today. So when we think about Ginkgo, Ginkgo is an organism company. So what do they specifically do? In a broad sense, they they make like sort of like boutique enzymes. So companies come to them and they say, "Hey, can you make a special organism for us to create this particular product that we need, or this particular ingredient?" Or if I was a cannabis company, I go to Ginkgo and I say, "Hey, instead of planting a warehouse full of cannabis plants, what can you do for me to increase my output, decrease my costs, and just increase efficiency in general?" So what I would do is I would go to Ginkgo. Ginkgo would create an organism for me, and they will make an organism that can ferment. Instead of fermenting beer in a factory called a foundry, these organisms start to ferment cannabis oil, so THC, for example. And if if you can leverage a company that can do that for you, you don't have to pay overhead costs and all that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting. So they were an organism company at first, is what I thought, but today I read something interesting that they're working with. I think it's pronounced IARPA, IARPA. It's a U.S. intelligence community, and they're helping them scan for like nefarious bio threats, so biosecurity issues. So Inco has this really, as much as they are an organism company, they're also a software company. So they have this software that can detect like mysterious DNA orders coming from around the internet, and they can
Wow.
determine like whether they know what the DNA is actually ordered for or not. Like if it's linked to a certain gene or not. Their software is what they're aiming to do is for the software to detect like, okay, is this a nefarious DNA order? Like, is this something that we should be on monitoring? So to that point, it's sort of like a God's eye view of the internet, like of the biology internet sphere. So like sort of like Palantir is doing,
I was
but
gonna
this is
say,
specifically for
I would hope that
biosecurity.
they would partner with Palantir. That would be
Isn't that
awesome.
cool? Isn't that really cool? It's a date.
Yeah.
It's definitely a data play if they can successfully pursue it.
And I didn't know that they played in that realm at all. I knew
Yep.
this. You had me at the synthetic biology because I know that
Yep.
that is a hot space. You think about all the materials and products we have today that we could replace at lower costs, maybe even healthier with synthetic biology.
Yeah.
And I
It's a huge
believe
field.
I believe you told me that when we were speaking about Ginkgo, they struck up a possible partnership with Kronos, a cannabis
Right. So
company.
it's exactly. So what's interesting with Ginkgo is that the example that I gave, if I was a cannabis company, I could do one of two things. I could give Ginkgo equity in my company if I'm a young company, and Ginkgo gives us a product, or they give us an organism that can produce the output that we're looking for, that we're seeking, and we give them equity. Another thing is that we can give them royalties, so we give them a piece of everything that we sell. So those are two really, and I'm sure you know this, those are two really, really good foundations for revenue. As long as you trust the partners that you're partnering with, like as long as you know that this is a big addressable market, this is novel, there's a huge demand for it. But it seems that there is, because one of their partners is Kronos, which produces cannabis or cannabinoids,
Hmm.
and the other one is Motif. So they're a plant-based meat company. So it's sort of like, you could think of Beyond Meat, or you could think of
Sure.
Impossible. And what Ginkgo does is they produce. So when you bite into a plant-based burger, it bleeds, right? It sort of presents itself as if it's a meat burger. You wouldn't really know unless you unless you tasted it, then you kind of know. Ginkgo is partnered with Motif, and what they do is through fermentation, is they produce the heat. They basically took a heme gene. The heme gene is like what produces the red blood cell, and they grew a protein that they can incorporate. It's an ingredient, it's a protein ingredient that you can incorporate into the burgers, and the burger bleeds when you incorporate that into the patty. It's just a
Wow.
really cool like product. It's not the final product, but it's a necessary component of the final product. So it's very
Well,
cool stuff.
it's very similar to the business model that we're seeing from companies like Palantir that I follow very closely of uh, taking your universal product that could impact so many different industries and then packaging that up and saying, okay, we can use this as part of the product that this company is going to produce, and we're going to make them better
Yeah.
because of our product. So either we give royalties, we have equity, maybe we invest, we help you start your endeavor as a new SPAC or a new company, but our product's
Right.
going to give you a differentiating edge, which is sounds exactly like.
Right. And you probably know it as like sort of like a software as a service. We call it SaaS. I'm sure you're
Yep.
super familiar with software as a service. I think there's going to be like this new class of, right now it's only 3 companies that I feel like are doing it. So it's Ginkgo, Amyris, and Zymergen. And so I think that they're going to be pursuing, maybe other companies will come in, but I think they're going to be pursuing biomanufacturing as a service. So how can we increase your outputs? How can we decrease your costs? So we take all your work and we grow it in one of our foundries. We ferment it so that you don't have to have all the overhead costs and all that trouble that it brings you. So I think I call it BMAS, biomanufacturing as a service. I think it's a really, really early play, and I think it's going to be super, super lucrative in the future.
Now, into all these new emerging types of gene editing, synthetic biology, all these different kind of sciences, is it patents that protect these companies? Is that what they're holding on to make sure that they're able to stop someone who has way more cash and could throw at it at a problem and try to come to a product? Or how does it work that they can protect themselves?
You're talking about gene editing companies in particular?
Yeah, it could be gene editing, just anything in the science world where what's to stop someone who has a bigger wallet and can attract the right talent to then be competitive in this space. You look at all the
Right.
big pharma companies, why couldn't they be competitive in gene editing and buy out a company or just have enough cash to throw at it to replicate or copy what someone else is doing?
For sure. So typically what you would think is that a company would just leverage intellectual property, like they would just patent their product. But in biotech, it's a little bit, specifically in CRISPR-Cas, it's very difficult. So there's an ongoing patent dispute about CRISPR-Cas9. And so Jennifer Doudna obviously was the one who discovered it. And when she published her paper, Feng Zhang from Editas Medicine, he's one of the founding scientists at Editas Medicine. He's from the Broad at MIT. He read the literature and basically had the presence of mind to take that literature and run with it and basically fast track a patent so that you can use the technology for editing in humans. We call it, in the patents, it's deemed eukaryotes. It's basically he had the intention of using it in humans. And so there's just still an ongoing patent battle about who came up with the technology or who sent in the original patents to get accepted in the first place. And so I think that patent battle will continue on, but over the years it's just getting less and less important because, as I said, we have like different guides, we have different Cas nucleases, and so CRISPR is a complex, so you can't really patent really patent one thing in particular because somebody can use one Cas but then mix in a different component and it becomes a totally different CRISPR complex. So it's just important to note that everybody sort of has like a workaround, but there's definitely licensing. Like Caribou is one of the notorious ones for being able to license their Cas nuclease to other companies. I think Editas Medicine also has, for sure, I think Editas Medicine has like a leg up right now also in the patent battle.
Yes, so I've heard a lot about this patent battle, but I've also heard from many of the founders and others that are more focused on the science. At the end of the day, we have to start seeing this produce and curing diseases and moving it forward. So it's really going to be interesting to see what, and I think you hit on this earlier, of different types of editing and different types of sciences for different diseases, because there's going to be certain things that only work a certain way for a particular disease and how you approach it. There's not this, I don't think there's going to be a winner takes all. Like this is just too big of a space. There's too many diseases. Um,
And so what's cool is that Beam Therapeutics, I hope you don't mind me interrupting.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
So Beam Therapeutics, as we both know, that they base edit, so they have such a precise technology to just change a letter. So what they can do is, like we mentioned in sickle cell before, if they really want, they can go in and fix the point mutation. So it's a change from an A to a T or a T to an A. They have the ability to do that. And then that can fix the actual sickle cell mutation, like the root cause. And they also have the ability to go in and actually activate fetal hemoglobin. So they're going actually with two approaches in their pipeline, and they're going to see which one is better, and which one actually works better, which one has better data. And I'm really excited to see that they have such a precise technology that they can actually do it both ways, because nobody else is actually doing that.
So that actually brings me to my next question on pipeline, because how do you know which company to invest in? We've established that we want great leadership, we want sound science and a competitive patent and moat.
Right.
Um, but as far as I just lost my train of thought. We're gonna have to edit this fun part. I
Mhm.
was going.
Pipelines, how do you choose?
Yeah, well, yes. So, okay, three, two, one. So this brings up another point of how do you choose on which company to invest in? And the pipeline for me is one thing I really like to look at, especially with all these different companies. Like Moderna was one. It's one of those ones that I wish I would have got. I knew
Right.
that they
Got
were
away
going to do
from
something
all of
special with RNA. I didn't know we were going to have a pandemic. I didn't know they were going to be one of the first ones to respond. But before the pandemic, and they went public, a little bit beforehand, before the
that.
pandemic happened, they had 27 different projects going on in the pipeline,
Right. And
and
I
so
was
that was,
overwhelmed. Right.
yeah, I was just like, well, surely something has to work here.
Right.
Is that how you approach these companies when you see someone who's betting only on three things and that's all they have in the pipeline versus Moderna who has 27? How do you decipher that?
Right. There's no right or wrong approach. Like, trust me, I looked into Moderna. When I would look at that pipeline, like, it was a broad pipeline, and I just thought it was
Yeah,
too good to be true. Like, how do they have the capital to pursue all of this research and
yeah,
development? And at the end of the day, there's going to be a cash burn that big, or it just means like a company just has their sights on too many things, and it's just like a huge. It could
trying
end
to
up just
boil
being a
the
huge
ocean.
mess. Right. Right. So I think there is like sort of a sweet spot. What I typically like to go for is either a niche market. So um, I think I don't own Verve, but Verve is a really good example. Like they target just the cardiovascular market, and so that's typically like something that I would do.
As
Most
an
of mine,
investor, would you say, I'm sorry to interrupt here, but
yeah,
just
yeah, go ahead.
as an investor, would you feel more confident because they have a niche and maybe even an expertise of the people they hire, that they're so focused on just cardiovascular? Does that give you more confidence as an investor?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And so what Graphite actually has is their founder is you know um, he's a legend in the hematopoietic poietic stem cell world. So he's a legend in blood, basically. Like, he knows how blood works and editing in the blood works. He has so much literature on it, and so I wouldn't be surprised to see them, like, go for targets in HSCs, we call it. But typically, what I do go for is a pipeline of about, I would say, like 5 to 10 is like a sweet spot. There's not too much cash burn. And then I'd like to see, like, okay, is there an ophthalmic indication? Is there a liver indication? Is there a blood disorder indication? Do they have something with cancer? And so I like to have like a little bit of broad approach in that sense. And typically what I see is that retail likes to see that too. And I think institutions like to see that too, so that it's not like a one hit, like a one trick pony, or if one thing, goes wrong, that, like, if one cardiovascular indication goes wrong, why the hell would the rest of your pipeline be successful? So it's good to expand into different target organ types, and that's generally the approach that I take. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but that's just how I do it.
Oh, that makes sense. I mean, diversification in a pipeline,
Right.
just like diversification with stocks, it seems like you're maybe potentially lowering your risk, and providing a bigger comfort zone there.